Hi, my name is Zack Marois. You can find Voyage Melting Pot on Kickstarter right now. I am the creator of the project. My social media is Zachary's Art on both Instagram and Twitter. On Facebook, it's Dwarf Star Comics. And you're watching Two Geeks Talking.
Hi, I'm Melograno. I am one of the contributors to the Voyage Anthology 2 Melting Pot. You can find that on Kickstarter, Voyage Melting Pot. You can find me on social media and Instagram at Melograno. And right now you are watching Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We're joined today by two very talented creative people on the show. This is the first time on the show for that. And this is the first time I've seen their particular collaboration anthology series of the sci-fi nature. We are joined today by the ever-talented Zack Marois and Brett Melograno.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, how you doing?
It's great having you both on the show here as well. I greatly appreciate you coming on. Obviously, you have a Kickstarter campaign. You have a great collaboration with a variety of very talented artists from the Kubert School as well too here. But for those that don't know anything about Voyage 2 Melting Pot, tell us what it's all about.
It's pretty much a, melting pot of a bunch of different characters, just coming in from very different worlds, just like all convening into this one book where their stories are all relevant due to this one alien character who's able to travel the universe, and he has witnessed everything. So therefore, he's telling the reader and showing them who these characters are.
So then how did this series come together? Because obviously you have a 200-page anthology of amazing, creative, talented people. Getting even just two people to work together on a series is hard enough. But how many people did you pull together to pull this off?
I'd say 23 Kubert School graduates. So I'm a graduate from, I believe, 2-3 years ago. Man, it's been a while. Time really flies by. Like, these guys used to be my classmates, the majority. And I just basically, after the success of the first volume, which I self-published, and the success of Voyage the Call, which funded on Kickstarter last year in January, it was a pretty much easy yes to get so many people on board to jump on this.
Then, Brett, how did you become involved with this?
We both were in the Kubert School together. We met our first year. We were in the same class and stuff. The school's 3 years. So, through those 3 years, we always kept in touch and stuff. And it was during our third year, right when the pandemics actually started, we were all kind of sequestered in our apartment. Zack was working on a narrative piece for the Sonderon character. And he just asked me for some helps with edit for dialogue and story and stuff like that. And then we just started collaborating, started working more on the Sonderon backstory and the mythology and stuff. And after we graduated, we just decided to keep it going. So from there, we started doing Voyage the Call. That was actually, I guess, our first real collaborative piece that we did, like a full story. Because originally, like I said, we were kind of doing a little, Zack had a couple pages here and there that I would, add dialogue to or just kind of work on the structure. But Voyage the Call was the first full, I think it was like 25 pages or something the book was that we actually worked on. So from there, it just kind of took off.
Like 23 creative people, all with different visions, bringing together their own stories to this amazing anthology must have been interesting in terms of collaboration.
It can be very stressful at times. It takes a lot of planning, and I'm very good at planning. That's all I could say to that. I mean, you just got to keep calm and make sure you plan for the worst and expect the worst. And I think you'll be good along the way, every step, with just that.
So out of these 23 creators, what stories surprised you the most?
Oh, the number one had to have been Bob Harden. Bob Harden is the instructor at the Kubert School. He has worked with Chuck Dixon, the writer, on this book called Seven Deadly Sinners, which is going to be coming out later this year. It's a book he spent quite a few amount of years working on. He had this story, if I remember correctly, it took him 10 years to make because of like all the stuff he had to do within that time frame, and no company wanted to go ahead and pick that issue up. Bob Harding dressed up as the character Sonderon for the Kickstarter video. He just calls me up on the phone. He's like, hey, I have this unused issue. Could I just like give this to you in the book, throw it in, as part of a story? I was like, oh my God, yeah. He hits me with that number. I'm like, wow. So that was the big one. The second one had to have been the artwork from Stephen Beard. Stephen Beard was this guy who used to go to the Kubert school. We spent the first year together, but we haven't heard from him since. I needed some help on one of the stories. It's about Scorn, a pot-smoking demon who is tasked to find this individual he failed on killing called Mothman. So he has to travel to Motheria and like take him out. So, things go crazy. Stephen just, hits me with 17 panels on one page, 15 on the other. And the artwork just is so stunning. It reminds me a lot of Trad Moore.
How about yourself, Brett? Was there any stories out of the 23 that was amazing in your point of view?
To be perfectly honest with you, I haven't really seen a lot of the guys' work. I've seen a few. Off the top of my head, I know a really talented artist, Eugene Zabrowski. He's doing a great story with his own character, Carson, where he sort of meets Sonderon, and it's a very heartwarming and cute sort of take on Raiders of the Lost Ark. I've seen the pages for that. I've read the script, and it's just a really heartfelt story. It's very cute. That's one that jumps out at me for sure. And of course, there's Jack French, who's a very, very talented young artist. He's got a great character called Slothman. Slothman actually was the backup story in our Voyage the Call first Kickstarter that we did last year. Jack's got a great Slothman tale in this one that has to do with diving a little bit more into Slothman's background. Just, his art is just top notch. To me, those are two definitely that I've read the stories. They're going to be standouts.
Definitely professional level artwork.
Being graduates of the Kubert School, and I've had a few graduates actually more recently on the show as well too. What did the Kubert School bring to your professional careers that made you stand out in being a creative person?
When I came to the school, I'd say within the first few months or our first month or two, I was really cocky. I definitely was taken down a peg or two. I'm a jokester. I like to fool around. Being at the school, it really grounded me. So I was able to figure out a way to fool around and still have people take me seriously because my work ethic is there. I'm going to hit my deadline. I'm very serious. I'm putting books together. I'm self-publishing them. I'm congregating a bunch of people, making sure that they keep in track. So, people know how much I joke around, but they also know that at the end of the day, I take the work very seriously.
If anything, I think that the experience reinforces a person's own concept of perseverance, because the thing about the school is that curriculum is, what is it? I think it's like 10 classes a week and 10 assignments a week. And, they preach to you, deadlines and stuff like that. So I think that it's really one of those situations where it's more about digging down deep. I know that's kind of cliche, but it's true in the sense that, you have to really push forward with all the other adversities. You're going to deal a lot with backhanded comments and maybe your stuff isn't up to snuff with other people. But at the end of the day, it really just kind of reinforces your own personal drive and conviction. So I think that's something that everyone can gain out of that experience, is definitely feeling a self-worth and a feeling that, you can push through and pretty much succeed if you take those lessons that you learn at the school.
They instilled a work ethic of, making sure that whatever gets thrown at you complete.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. By hook or by crook sometimes, and sometimes you really got to learn. The trick about it too is that some assignments are more important than the others. So that's another thing that you got to kind of juggle and stuff. So that's another thing that you got to learn at that place.
The world of course, Voyage is amazing in itself. What inspired the world of the Voyage universe?
Man, that's a tough question. Because there's a lot of different ways I could answer that. The universe that I'm building pertains around Sonderon strictly, and the things that he's directly involved in. The anthologies, Volume One and this one, Melting Pot, Volume Two. These stories are canon in terms of like how they happened, but they're not part of his main story at all whatsoever. It's just like it's like Hellboy meeting Rocketeer,
Yeah.
that could happen lore wise, but that was just a one shot issue where what if those two met? So those are how the anthologies are. So I have like an own universe, but I am bringing people onto the label. What inspired me was in the beginning, during the second year at the Kubert school, when I was getting closer on finalizing his story, when it was just certain things, certain kinks that I needed to work out, there was a point where there was an instructor, Max Fuchs. I was talking about the story, and I was telling him like, "Oh, when I get out of the school, that's when I'm going to release issue 1." And Max was like, "Why not just do it now?" When he said that, I thought about it after when I went home, and I was like, like what really is stopping me besides the hefty workload of homework? And I thought about it. I was like, everybody else that's around me has great potential in their characters. They haven't figured it out yet as much as I did because I've been working on this since the first year. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to get these guys. I'm going to force them to work on a book together in this book that I got already. We're going to make it an anthology. We're going to have Sonderon in it, plus their characters, and we're just going to push it through. So I didn't really think more so on the story, just more how am I going to properly tell and make this book relevant where it makes sense to the reader. So if they picked up the first volume, is it going to make sense just on its own? And it did. It just helped pave the roadway to where I got now.
Collaboration is always a fun experience to have, and obviously through the Kubert School, you all have collaborated either together or separately in your own ways here. In terms of this particular project, though, or this series, I should say, what strengths does Zack bring to you, Brett, and what strengths do you bring to Zack?
Brett's, for me, honestly, he's like, I'm not trying to make it sound cheesy, but he really is like the support system underneath me, because when a person reads Sonderon now, and I mean now, they're not just getting the way that I drew Sonderon, but they're reading how he acts, what's his personality like, how he is involved in the situation, how he gets out of it. That's where Brett's genius really comes in. Like, he's a great writer. This guy will come up with ideas, like just really great ideas on the fly, and write it out in a way where you can just make a movie off of it. You can just go on this whole tangent. That's a gift. Like, he's got a writing gift for creating things and just making it fluent. And that was something I recognized right off the bat, and I knew I couldn't let that go. When people read Sonderon and they get that first impression, that's how he is, it's no longer my creation. It's both our creations. And with that being said, he is now the co-creator of Sonderon now and forever in all the stories that we're going to be working on together. So he is more so the support underneath me. That's definitely the strength that he's got to me.
Well, I think definitely, whenever you mention Sonderon or you talk about Sonderon, there's a real love that comes from Zack when he talks about Sonderon. When I first met him, which was at the Kubert School, the student housing, it's called the Mansion. It's this old 100-year-old building, and they put all the first years in there together. I remember one night having dinner. Zack was downstairs and he had a binder full of concept drawings and different ideas and stuff for this character who had a different name at the time. But he was kind of giving me a rough idea of what he wanted to achieve. He wanted to tell a sci-fi story, an adventure story, but through the eyes of an alien. And it's a really interesting concept because, for the most part, when we watch a sci-fi story, it's always through a human, might meet some aliens along the way and everything like that. But Zack wanted to tell the story of, the universe through an alien's point of view. and not just, an alien, sort of an outcast alien. He's not some, heroic Captain Kirk or Han Solo kind of character. He's, still very much a novice to this whole galaxy hopping thing. So Zack's strength is, like I said, there's a real love for the creation, and it's infectious, because whenever you work on something with somebody, if you don't feel their passion, it's hard for you to get passionate about it. And like I said, when Zack talks about Sonderon and the vision that he has, it's infectious. And from there, it just kind of links into this chain where, the words come out and the adventures come out. So, like I said, I think that his passion and love for the character really bring this to life.
Themes are always an important aspect when it comes to storytelling in general, and especially for this particular series and this anthology as well too. What were some of the themes that spoke to both of you as this series has evolved?
Brett, you want to go first on this one? I got to think.
Sure. I think diversity is a pretty big theme in this book. We're getting so many different stories. People pick up the book, they're not just going to get just everything's a sci-fi story. There's pretty much everything in there for everybody. There's mystery, there's horror, you're going to get a lot of different stories and different creator reviews. And I think that's basically why the book's called Melting Pot, because it's not just one theme. You're going to get a taste of everything.
If I had to pick one, I'd have to say, man, I agree with Brett, because that's exactly the whole premise of the book. I'd say if I had to add to it, it would have to be the looks for me. Just a physical appearance of the characters. They each look so very different, and I wanted that. Even when I told everybody, just create whatever you want to create. I don't care what it is, because Sonderon is going to be like the Crypt Keeper. He's just going to go ahead and sit in his console and show the reader. So they go ahead and they just write their own stories. But every single time they got back to me, every story was so different. Not one story was even a hint similar to the next one. And I really, really appreciated that. And that's what you get when you go ahead and you're trained to a point where you treat yourself like a professional, and you go ahead and you create all these great stories to a professional level. You're going to get the best of each person. And that's what we got in this book. And that's pretty much the theme for me.
Looking at the language, not only of the visual medium, but also from a writing perspective as well. When was the first or earliest experience where you both learned that language had power?
Oh man. Second year. When I was really starting to seriously edit the writing of Sonderon, that was when I really realized how much words can impact a character. That's the more you know. It's like when you get into the Kubert school, you don't realize how serious and important key components are. Like a colorist, a colorist can make or break a story. It's not just the artist, or even a letterer. Bad lettering can ruin a comic book. And it's those little key things that once you pick up on that, you're going to realize like, oh, damn, I wish I'd known that sooner. And writing, in my opinion, it's the first staple of important certainty to make sure that this book will be professional.
In regards to the school, in the curriculum, for about the first 2 years, we were pretty much telling stories without dialogue, which is interesting, because that's a really tough order sometimes, because, it is a visual medium, obviously. But it wasn't until our third year, at least in my opinion, when we actually had a proper writing course and a writing instructor, the power of words were reinforced. Kind of made me rethink a lot of the books and the things that I've read in the past, to kind of think about, you really have to have a really tight synergy between visual and written. I think definitely that course made that whole, connection come to life and just reinforced it for me. It's not just explosions and jumping over buildings, which is important. You really have to have solid story, solid dialogue, and you really have to have an idea of where you're going with your story if you really want to get people hooked on it. Flash will only take you so far, basically, you know?
What was the hardest scene to write for this anthology?
Oh man, for writing, it wasn't the hardest because I had a basic idea of what I wanted, and then Brett just like killed it with that story. The hardest scene had to have been to draw. It's on page 7, and oh my God, you got these 3 bounty hunters, right? And they're fighting Sonderon. One's aimed a rifle shooting at him. Sonderon is like jumping over, and in midair, he's throwing not only an EMP device on a rifle, but he's also throwing a bola tripwire like at the second villain. While he's doing that, the 3rd bounty hunter is like directly behind him, shooting him and missing. And I'm just like, how the hell am I going to do this? Like, and it was just such a pain to draw, like just to figure out the layout. But once the layout was figured out, I was like, okay, this is great. Layouts are always the hardest thing. It's not the writing, it's the layouts. Once you get the layout done and out of the way, penciling is just like, oh, finally. Now I can just sit back, relax, and just take care of it from here.
So why are the layouts so difficult?
The layouts are difficult because you have to transfer something that's written and something that you only think of in your head. You're like, you see this, and like this idea is one thing, but to put it on paper is a whole nother story because you got to like think about perspective. You got to think about the what angle you want to use, down shot, up shot, profile view, establishing shot, all these different things that's going to be very important in capturing the mood of the story and how it goes. That's how you figure it all out, is in the layouts. And that's why it's the toughest. That's where you think the most. And then when you go to pencil it, the things that you pencil, you're just basically plotting out your perspective lines after you did in the layouts, and then, inking it. Each stage is tough, but the toughest stage is definitely the layout stage.
So then what was edited out of the book?
If I had to say, some concept designs that I did for the characters, I just ended up redoing. I never really had difficulty editing anything out of the book because we all, not only just the stuff that I did for my story with Brett and what Brett did with his story, but all of us knew exactly what we were doing, and we were way ahead of this. So we took care of the hardest parts early on, and then we started designing the book. It just, every page that was coming in, the only thing that needed to be worked on was like, edit this little tiny thing here, edit that there. Nothing really had to get yanked out of the book, honestly.
What is your creative kryptonite?
Oh, Brett, you want to answer that one?
Creative kryptonite. Wow. Geez, dang, that's a tough one right there. I think, I guess just fatigue, to be honest with you, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's like, I know for my story personally, I had started out with, it was just going to be like 5-page something, but then it evolved into a 12-page, almost like a novella or something like that. And I just kept on writing. And then, then came the art and the inks and the colors and everything like that. And by the time I was done, I didn't want to pick up anything after that. Like, I was just really, really exhausted. So I guess the creative kryptonite is just fatigue. When you push yourself too hard, I guess, then you fall into the traps of those little temptations. Are always tough, that could be a form of kryptonite as well,
Procrastination, that's definitely my kryptonite. I get so antsy and so worried about how bad I can screw something up, and it builds up so badly inside me that I'm like, I want to sit down, like, honestly, like tonight, I want to sit down and draw. But I have so much on my plate, and I just, it's so easy. All I got to do is just sit on the damn chair and just put pencil to paper on a thing that I'm working on. And it's so tough for me to do that. Eventually, I'm just like, come on, stop being stupid. You're being an idiot. And then I'm like, you got so much writing on you right now. You got people counting on you. You have no choice but to go ahead and get this stuff done. And that's kind of what forces me to sit down. People are expecting me to put out new material. And that is what really forces me to keep going.
Then how do you deal with burnout?
It's not good. I'm still trying to figure out a way to solve it. I think I burned myself pretty bad. When I burn myself, it only happens when things go wrong. And I've done everything I could to make sure those things don't happen, because they should not happen. By any means necessary, under any circumstance, it shouldn't have happened. But it did. Like, for example, on April Fool's Day, of all damn days, during Voyage the Call, I was supposed to go ahead and ship in March. I was supposed to order all the books for Voyage the Call on the 1st of March. In January, I called and said, I got this book, but I also have variant covers. Can I place that all in the same order? And they said, yes, totally can. We can totally do that. That's no problem. And I was like, sweet, that's awesome. I should have gotten that in writing. Come to find out, April Fool's Day, I call and tell them, all right, I'm ready to go. And then they tell me, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't do that here. Each time you replace an image, it makes it a whole different order on the cover. And I was just like, dude, I want to, and I had to work up, all the way to the top of the food chain till I got to the person. He's like, I do remember saying that, but we definitely can't, we can't do something like that. It's just not our policy. The best we can do is give you 2%. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was in the hole. I had to take some of my own money out, and it was very, very tough. It was a tough pill to swallow, and that is what really burned me bad. Things like that is what really gets me in the burn zone.
The way I kind of preemptively avoid it, it's going to sound cheesy, but, I like to, go for a run and to a fairly healthy diet and sleep schedule and stuff. So I think that helps, but, eventually, you do kind of burn out after a while. So when that happens, you just kind of take a step back and you just catch up on things personally. If there's any comics I haven't read yet, any books that I wanted to get around to. So I kind of heal the mind, so to say, by just kind of doing things that I threw on the back burners. You don't feel that what you're doing, whether it be, penciling, inking, writing, is a chore. So you don't end up hating it at the end. So you definitely do have to do those kind of things to make sure that you're not completely, fried when it comes to do your next project.
Is there anything that I haven't touched upon for those that are watching and listening to this interview?
I think you're pretty much hitting the head with a lot of the questions. I'm having a good time.
At what point are we good enough?
Never. Because for me, it's never. When you think that you're good enough is when you feel that there's no need to improve yourself. And that's a problem. Everyone, every single day, needs to improve something in their life, whether it be the way they talk or, how they carry themselves to their trade, their respective trade or professionalism. It's just, you always got to work on something. It goes the same for an artist. You always have room to improve. You're not Kim Jong-il or Carl Kempinski. You can't just sit there for like a minute and just, paint a damn portrait. So you have to constantly improve yourself to the point where you can get to that point one day. But for now, don't even think that you're good enough. That's just not true.
There's always you got to keep, striving to get better and stuff. But I think it's also healthy to take a step back and look at what you did and just kind of take a sort of a checklist of, okay, in this project, these are the things that I improved on. These are the things that I'd like to improve on. Just be proud of and happy with what you got, basically. And, like you said, always, I can do better this time. But I think it's important that whatever project you finish, be satisfied with it. I think it's important, because, I think as artists in any medium, whether it be, comics, writing, music, think we all have a tendency to beat ourselves up a little bit too much. That eventually leads to the burnout and the fatigue and stuff like that. So like I said, it's important to keep striving, but at the same point, you got to take a step back and say, like, hey, I did okay on this round,
What is the second wisest thing that you've heard someone say that has helped you in your career?
Oh, man. Second wisest, the wisest thing, man, that's a tough one. That's okay. The second wisest thing I probably have been ever said to me, it probably would have been a relative of mine that I used to work with, and he threatened to take away my characters because I was working in his brand at the time. And he goes like, no, just because you created it doesn't make it yours. Because I can go ahead if you want to pull out these characters at any time, I can take you to court and make that not happen. To me, that was a wise thing, even though it's very incorrect. It was a wise thing that was said to me because it just taught me to be very sure and careful to take every step that I move forward in what I create and what I do, to make sure that it's protected on all ends. So that way, when it's made, not only is it solid in its story and in the product, but it's safe that legally for both me and Brett.
Tune out negativity. I think that's definitely an important thing. I think that it's good to get constructive criticism and those critiques, but at the same time, there's going to be a lot of people that are just going to be negative around you and, that will want to just, hammering you over the head with negative stuff. And someone said to me, just tune all that out. Whatever your vision is, go forward with it, take the critiques from the people that you love and care from, but the other stuff, just tune it out.
Everyone has one person that inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
Jeez, that's a good question. I don't necessarily think there's not really one person I could say that I could point to. I mean, if anything, it's always been just for my family, basically. I've always wanted to do things to sort of thank them, basically, for the support that they've given me and make them, see that all this stuff is worth it and stuff. So yeah, not really one person, so to say. I guess, like I said, just my family being my immediate family, my parents, and that's pretty much it.
You asked me, I would have told you a year ago. I would have told you, Todd McFarlane. I would have told you Steve Ditko. These guys are inspirational beings for creating these characters that are still beloved to this day. But the older I get, the more I realize, to what Brett is saying, the people that inspire me the most, it keeps me going to do this, actually is like, Brett, Stephen Michedick, Justin Shin. These guys, a lot of the guys that are part of the Voyage Melting Pot book, we have such raw, unbridled talent for ideas that are just waiting to be put onto paper. And I see all the potential in it. And I see that these guys just don't want to stop as much as I do. That gives me more of a push to keep going, because I know that I know I have a good idea. I know this is going to hit, and I know there's going to be a lot of talk on this. It may not happen now, but it will happen tomorrow or the next day. So these are people that inspire me.
From a professional perspective, you have created not only one volume of this series, but you've now created an anthology. You have a Kickstarter ongoing. The first one was successful. The second one is doing very well as well, too. So from a professional perspective, you are successful. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
No, I don't. What I envision success is owning a home and you're content with sitting down on a couch, right, relaxing and just taking a breather and looking at your shelf full of a row of comics that you made, and I mean a row, and you're just relaxing with like a car in the parking lot and cartoons playing on the TV. You're just having a good time, like sitting in your man cave. To me, that I would have to say that would be success. I mean, even owning an action figure of your character, that's pretty successful. But until I reach that point, I'm not going to say that I'm successful.
I think everything is a little success. The way I look at it is that, it's not just like the mega success, whether it be just that one thing, like City Slickers. What's that one thing? You know what I'm saying? I think it's the little tiny successes, like I said, like, we did the first Kickstarter. That was a success. We're working on this one. Hopefully it'll get funded. That'll be a great success too. The stories that are in this book are another success, so I think the way that I'm judging success for this whole journey so far, the goals that we set, if we achieve them and if we can keep doing it, that'll be the success. If we can still keep, cranking out these stories, and if we can get them out to people, whether it be, ideally, sure, we'd love to see these stories on a comic shelf for, people to put down their $2.99, $3.99, what a book is sold for today. I mean, that would be, the height of success. If we can find a way to get these stories out to people, whether it be through Kickstarter or Webtoons or any other kind of way, that's a success. So I think that the definition of success is sort of defined in the way that if we're able to keep doing what we're doing, and if there's a fan base out there that wants it, that's the real measure of success.
The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
I don't deal with it very well, honestly. And if I'm being honest, because I got a lot of people that, tell me like, in order to go ahead and, keep going, you got to fail a few times. And honestly, I've had my share of failures before going to school, even during, I've gotten so sick and tired of failing that I have pushed really hard to make sure that everything that I try to do doesn't fail. Now, and that's why I just don't take it very easily when something does fail, because I do the best I can to make sure it doesn't. It's just an honest answer. I just don't take failure very well.
The easy answer is I drain my sorrows in one of these, these gigantic M&Ms containers, But, after I do that, I just basically, take a few days to myself and regroup and try and figure out what did I do wrong, take another crack at it, basically. It's, I think like everything, you definitely do need time to acknowledge your failures. And I think for people to say, you just got to get back up on the horse again, you risk getting back on that horse too soon. And you commit an even worse sort of failure, So I think it's important to take a step back and have that time to, quote unquote, grieve or whatever it is. So you can kind of, see what you did wrong and come up with a new battle plan. So that's pretty much what I do.
The younger generation is looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way, whether it's as a comic creator or writer, an artist, or whatever they would like to do creatively. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
Oh, man. That's the first time I've actually gotten asked that question. I think the best answer I could give to that is whatever they figure out and what they love doing. I don't care if everyone is against them on that idea. Their opinions don't mean nothing. It's what that individual wants and what that individual loves. If they can find out what inspires them, be the best that they can at that particular thing, and just go crazy with it, because that will be recognized in whatever body of work that individual will make. People will notice and be aware of it, and that in itself will inspire others to go ahead and keep going.
I think just by keep challenging themselves, and challenging, I mean, not just by stories, but just a perception of things. Don't settle for, the status quo. I think that's what happens. I think that, when, not to get too philosophical, but when there's that whole thing about, when man stagnates, basically society withers and dies, so in that regard, I think that if people are, a little too complacent, creativity falters, and from there we don't get anything new. We get the same old stuff, a million different, like, death of this character, and then we're going to bring them back in a year. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's important for the next generation to question things and always think of new ways to tell stories, because, let's face it, a lot of stories are tale as old as time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so you just got to find a new way to convey that idea. Just be mindful of that and always push forward, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Well, I do hate to say it, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. Before I let you both go, where can we find you, and how can we support you online, and where can we find the Kickstarter, and when does it end?
For me, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter, Zachary's Art. On Facebook, it's Dwarf Star Comics. The campaign that we have running now is Voyage Melting Pot. We got a goal of 25K. You just type in Voyage Melting Pot on Kickstarter, and the title just will come right on up.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the stuff for the Kickstarter, like you said, just go on there and type it in and stuff. For me personally, I've been trying to be a little bit better as far as social media goes, but I guess you can find me on Instagram. It's just B Melograno, first letter, initial, and then last name Melograno. So I'm going to try and get a little bit better, posting some more, writing some more art and things like that. So that's probably the best place for you to find me.
Thanks so much for both of you to come on the show. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope to have you both back on in the future.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Kurt. We really appreciated it.
Like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,000+ others on our website, twogeekstalking.com or tgtmedia.com, or on our YouTube channel, which is a little more updated than our website, youtube.com/TGTmedia. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening, watching on Two Geeks Talking.